Hey there, GCSE students, and welcome to this targeted revision explainer for your Good and Evil module. I'm absolutely thrilled to help you master this topic today. We're going to be focusing specifically on the wildly differing views of religious sculpture and statues across different faiths and denominations. It's honestly a fascinating subject, mostly because historically, debates over whether a piece of carved stone belongs in a worship space have literally sparked riots, fueled revolutions, and split entire empires. It really shows how people can look at the exact same ancient text and come away with completely different ideas about how a sacred environment should actually look. If you want to absolutely ace this section of your exam, understanding these visual, physical, and historical differences is key. So here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at 1. Statues in Catholic churches, 2. The Protestant opposition, 3. The Jewish perspective, and 4. We'll get those core differences summarized for your notes. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Statues in Catholic churches. Okay, let's dive right in and look at a tradition that actively and beautifully embraces physical representations as a core part of the spiritual experience. If you've ever stepped inside a Catholic church, you know that carved or molded representations are definitely not hidden away. They're placed in very prominent positions right around the building. The most common figures you'll run into are representations of Jesus on the crucifix, Mary, and various saints. But historically, these pieces weren't just created to be beautiful art. They served a super practical purpose. For centuries, they actually acted as visual Bibles for everyday people who couldn't read or write. They were designed to catch the eye, tell a sacred story instantly, and naturally draw the mind toward the divine. But here's the thing. These statues aren't just architectural decorations. They're active, functional parts of the church. You'll often find these figures positioned by a dedicated side altar. Just imagine stepping away from the bustling main congregation into a quiet little alcove. You've got a physical kneeler and a rack of flickering votive candles casting this warm glow on the stone. That entire physical setup, right down to the lighting and the posture of kneeling, is specifically designed to let people spend time in completely quiet, personal prayer. Now, if you want to snag top marks on your exam, you've got to understand exactly how Catholics use these images, because there is a huge misconception out there. Catholics use these statues purely to focus their prayers. Think of it like looking at a photo of a beloved family member who lives far away. When you talk to that photo, you obviously know you aren't talking to the paper and ink, right? The picture just helps you focus your thoughts on the real person it represents. In the exact same way, the image helps Catholics vividly recall how saints or holy people served God and lived good lives, which serves as powerful inspiration. Lighting those votive candles is a deliberate action to show respect and focus on the person the statue represents. So remember this absolutely critical distinction. Catholics absolutely do not worship the actual physical statue itself. Section 2. The Protestant opposition. Now, let's flip the script and look at why not all Christians would ever allow statues and sculptures in their churches. This is where the theological debate really heats up. The central argument against statues is rooted entirely in a very strict interpretation of the Ten Commandments, specifically the commandment that expressly forbids making graven images and worshiping false idols. For many Protestants, this text is definitely not a loose metaphor. It's a direct, literal instruction from God about how humans must and must not interact with the divine. The word graven literally means something that is carved or sculpted out of materials like wood or stone. And because of that one specific word, a three-dimensional statue suddenly becomes a massive theological issue. To fully grasp their viewpoint, we have to define what they see when they look at a Catholic side altar. Many Protestant Christians argue that a Catholic statue acts as both a graven image, because, well, it's a carved object, and a false idol. So what is a false idol? It's essentially any physical object that distracts from or attempts to take the place of the true invisible God. Think of it kind of like bringing a third wheel on a deeply personal romantic date. It completely distracts from the intimate one-on-one connection. For Protestants, a statue is that unwanted third wheel interrupting a direct relationship with God. And this brings us to the core conflict you really need to explain in your exams. We have the exact same action viewed in two completely opposite ways. On one side, we've got the Catholic view of using a physical object for focusing prayers. On the flip side, the Protestant view sees this exact same action as straight up breaking the Ten Commandments. Protestants argue that when Catholics light candles or pray in front of a statue of a saint, they're actually failing to worship God directly. In their strict interpretation, this physical act crosses the line into idolatry, regardless of what the worshiper's internal intentions might be. To see the absolute extreme end of this Protestant opposition, just look at the Quakers. To avoid any possibility whatsoever of breaking the commandment against graven images, Quakers worship in completely plain buildings. Imagine walking into a space where there's no focal point at the front. There's no altar, there are absolutely no statues, no stained glass windows, no crosses, nothing. The seating is often just arranged in a circle or facing each other in pure silence. The space is kept completely visually empty so that the congregation's focus can be entirely, purely, and undistractedly on God. Section 3. The Jewish perspective. Okay, let's explore how this opposition to statues traces back even further by looking at the Jewish perspective, offering another incredibly strict interpretation of the ancient texts. Similar to the Protestant view, but originating much earlier, Jews completely reject the use of statues or sculptures in the synagogue. They look directly to the Ten Commandments, which forbid making images and idols. In the Jewish faith, the principle is entirely non-negotiable. Only God is worthy of worship, and God must be worshipped directly, without any physical intermediaries. Therefore, while a synagogue might be beautifully decorated, that decoration is strictly ornamental. We're talking intricate geometric patterns, beautiful calligraphy, maybe some floral designs, but it would never, ever be the image or representation of a human person. The fundamental theological belief driving this is actually really profound. Jews believe that God goes entirely beyond human understanding. To create a physical picture or a carved statue of God is basically trying to put a limit on the limitless. Because God can't be comprehended by our tiny human minds, God can never ever be accurately depicted in a physical picture or a block of stone. Doing so isn't just a minor mistake. It fundamentally misunderstands the boundless, infinite nature of the Creator. Section 4, Core Differences Summarized. We've covered a lot of deep theological ground here. Let's bring this all together with some high energy and lock in these comparisons for your final exam revision. All right, let's lock in this mental snapshot for your exams. For Catholics, statues are prominent, functional tools. With their side altars and candles, they're used to vividly recall holy lives and focus prayer. Catholics firmly believe this does not break the commandments because the actual statue is never worshipped. Then, for Protestants and Quakers, statues are heavily opposed or entirely removed from silent worship spaces, viewed directly as the graven images and false idols explicitly forbidden by the Ten Commandments. And finally, for the Jewish faith, statues of people are entirely rejected in the synagogue, utilizing strictly ornamental decoration instead, because an infinite God goes completely beyond human understanding and physical depiction. So as you sit down to write your essay on good and evil, ask yourself this final question. How will you explain that one single ancient text, the Ten Commandments, can result in 3 wildly different physical environments for worship? Understanding not just what these groups do, but the deep historical and theological reasons why they do it based on their reading of Scripture, that is what will make your answers truly stand out. Keep this explainer handy as you revise, and you'll be perfectly prepared. Happy studying!